This is going to be my first attempt at doing a voiceover for one of my videos. And the current editing system I have, I can't figure out how to do it. So I'm recording it on my phone. Well, maybe that's how everyone does it. Maybe they record it on their phone and then they upload it on their computer. I have no idea. So anyway, I have not ridden my horse in about at least 2 weeks. And even though he is now in his teens, and he's supposedly a grown-up boy, I decided it might be best just to lunge him first. And I thought, well, maybe I could film it and see if it gets exciting. So I did lunge him today in a saddle because I thought, well, if things go well, I might as well just get on. Or also if things are not going well, I might have to also just get on. So I always start my lunge without any side reins on. I just let him walk. I always seem to start lunging to the left. I wonder if I should switch that. I worry that I lunge too much to the left and not enough to the right just because I do so much from the left. But maybe this video will show if that's actually true or not. Pay attention. Someone pay attention and let me know. So I'm asking him to trot. And he's a pretty pokey old man nowadays, so he needs a little bit of reminder to keep going. And I use this as an opportunity to check to see how he is moving, if there's any stiffness. I'm over analyzing everything that happens in his hocks nowadays just because it's been over a year since his injections. And I don't know what I'm going to do next maintenance-wise. And then I ask him to come back down to the walk. And I just do that to check in. I like to test my brakes before I go into the canter. I just want to make sure that if I can stop whatever happens if something were to happen. Because I feel like lunging is not just, a warm-up exercise or a physical exercise. It's also like an obedience exercise, at least for me. Ooh, and there he goes into the canter. He didn't really want a canter when I first started. He wanted to do lots of head throwing up. But you can see he's still really choppy and he's not really moving forward. It's more of like an up-down. Oh, I'm so sad I'm not on him. Lots of head shaking. I'm laughing because this is the first time I've also watched it, so. Oop, and you didn't keep cantering. Yeah, I remember now that when I was cantering this way, or I should say when he was cantering this way, I had to keep asking him. And sometimes what I do when I'm having trouble keeping him moving forward, I'll bring him in on a smaller circle and ask him to canter from there. But because I hadn't done a lot with him in the weeks prior, I didn't want him any closer to me than he had to be, just in case he decided to kick out or come cantering into the middle. But now you can see once he started trotting again after the canter that he's much more forward and free moving. And I ask him to come down to the walk. This beginning part of the lunge is just to get him warmed up both directions, walk, trot, canter, before I put the side reins on, because I definitely want him moving forward before I put on the side reins, because I remember there was a time when he was younger that he actually scared me into not lunging him for a long period of time because he went backwards in his side reins, and I was so scared that he was going to flip himself over that I just stopped lunging him. And it wasn't until I was a working student that the dressage instructor had to lunge him for me, and it was a little coming to Jesus because he tried to do the same thing with her, and it's really just like a scare tactic for him because he doesn't like being put in the side reins. I'm seeing I'm doing this very Pony Club approved. I put my lunge line over the top of the head. I know there's lots of different ways to do it. I just put it over the top of the head so that I have contact with both sides of the bit. I've also done it just on the one side of the bit on the inside, which is fine too. But I think there should be even pressure from the outside to the inside. Going to the right, he is more sucked in to me, I guess is the way to say it. So I have a harder time keeping him out on the circle to the right. He just kind of like ducks in. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll point my whip towards his shoulder, and he just starts cantering for no reason. He's like, I know how to do this. Let's just move on to the good stuff here. So I bring him back down to the trot because, as I said, this is an obedience exercise. So if he's just cantering at will or trotting off at will, it's kind of like, well, thanks for listening to me. His trot looks nicer this way, I think. But that also could be because he already warmed up the other way. Next time I lunge, I'll have to start to the right. I actually remember now I had intended to start going off to the right, and I cut out the part of the video where I actually almost start lunging him to the right, but he's hooked up to the left, and I was like, whoops. But in my mind, I wanted to do that. And so once again, I'm checking my brakes, bringing him back down to walk, making sure he's listening to me. I hate how much slack is in the rope, the lunge line this way, because he's sucked in, so I have to keep holding it up. Woo! He says, oh, the canter. What a grouchy old man. Ugh, I'm resisting the urge to like cluck at him because he's just, this is not, he canters so slow and in place on the lunge line. When I'm riding him, I feel like I'm constantly asking him to slow down. I see that's when I try to correct him and tell him to move forward, and he's so easily offended. Torn's the kind of horse that he has a very firm belief system in what he should be doing, and when you remind him that he maybe should be doing something else, he's very offended. He's like, well, I was doing my best, he says. This is going to be a great voiceover of me mostly doing Torn's voices. Then we come back up to the canter again. It's getting a little more nice, a little more forward. But as you can see, he's still really sucked in. I wish he would bring his front end in and bring his haunches out. But it's hard to do on the lunge line without really messing with him and getting up close to him. And I know him well enough to know that if I do step into him, especially when he's been out of work, he's going to have something to say about it. So I'm putting on the side reins. I know side reins are sometimes a controversial thing, but I keep my side reins fairly loose, much looser than they need to be. But always when I put them on, he acts like they're so tight. And I always put them on outside rein first to inside rein, so that way if he does start backing up, I can be there on the inside with the lunge whip and encourage him to go forward. Because there you see he starts to back up because he feels the tension of the reins. But as you'll see, as he actually starts going, they're actually quite loose. And he's a horse that always sucks behind the vertical inside reins, and he never actually pushes in to the full contact. So I usually start him trotting off very quickly in the side reins just because I want to get going forward. And you can see whether he's wringing his tail that he is not so happy with this. But he settles into it once he gets moving forward. And you can see he's behind the vertical because to him, he feels like, oh, this is, but he feels like, oh, it's so tight. But you can see as he's going around that there's so much slack in them because he's able, where he's holding his head, you can see the rein going up and down, jiggling. It's because he's not pushing into that contact correctly, which is kind of what happens when I ride him too. And then I'm just checking in again before the canter and trot. He's doing his little steppy trot here. Just a little rack around. Ugh, I really want to cluck at him. I do think it's important for him to walk in the side reins after he's trotted a little bit, because one place where we struggle with on the flat is that he does not like walking with contact. He's resistant to that, and he just tends to get really sucked back. So I feel like this is a good opportunity to practice walking with the contact and knowing you still have to walk forward while accepting that contact. There he settles better. Big show into the canter. He's so exuberant, I think is what all my tests said this summer. Exuberant into the transitions. Yeah, and you can definitely see now that the side reins are too loose because he's able to get above that contact and poke his nose out in front of it. But for me, there are worse evils than long side reins, so I'd rather have him out in front of the vertical, but have the reins keeping him from going too above the vertical. Or not the vertical, too above the contact. And I like how they help him when he's coming down from the canter into the trot. They help encourage him to keep his head level instead of shooting it back up when he and it helps balance him without me being on him. wish he was a little bit more forward here, but I'm happy with how he's settled into it. And the trot, you can tell, is definitely improving. Much more free moving. He's coming over his back and tracking up better. He's sitting on the inside shoulder instead of being balanced and coming around and bending through his body. He's bending more to the outside. So something I could maybe do to change that is to shorten the inside side rein a little bit to encourage him. Or I could change where my lunge line is and thread it through the bit and bring it back to the girth. Oh, he's so cute when he halts. So once again, I remove the inside side rein first and then move to the outside side rein before I switch him over with the lunge line. Oh, this is, I think, where my another boarder behind me was asking me about the grid I had set up. And I think I offended her, but she was asking me about the distances. So I was telling her how many feet it was. And it was a 1 stride to a 2 stride, and it was 18 feet to 32 feet. And she was saying it just felt so long. And her horse is, you can kind of tell from the video that her horse is taller than Torin. He's an off-the-track thoroughbred, and he's maybe closer to 16.3 hands. Torin's more like 16.1. Very leggy horse. But he doesn't really move forward. So she was telling me that the 1 stride felt so long and he really had to stretch. And I was like, well, it's just 18 feet. So, you know, that's a classic 1 stride trotting grid. And I just made the comment that, well, maybe his strides are shorter than Torin's. And she was like, well, my horse is actually very adjustable. And she goes off into this tangent about all the things he's able to do between like a set distance. And I was just kind of like, well, you know, here you are saying that he can't make the distance. And I'm just saying, well, it's very easy distance for Torin. Torin needs those shorter grid distances, not because he can't make the longer ones, but because he likes to get long and flat out runny. So I need that to kind of sit him back on his haunches. Anyway, now we're not talking about lunging, now we're talking about the jumping. So now we are lunging again to the left. Once again, I put the can't talk, side reins on outside rein and then inside rein, so I can push him forward. He's less resistant this way into moving forward after he gets the contact on, and I don't know, you'll have to ask him if that's because he already lunged the other way or because this way he's more accepting of the contact. I wish he was a little bit more forward. As you can see, I'm flicking my crop at him. And if you could hear the sound, you could probably hear my voice constantly asking him to trot more. He is getting started on a magnesium supplement, and actually by the time I post this video, he's been on the magnesium supplement for a little over a week now. And actually when I rode him the other night, he was very free moving forward, like appropriately forward, and I was so happy. So who knows if that's because he got all this time off in November, choppy canter, or because we started the magnesium. So maybe it's magic magnesium, or maybe it is his little vacation. You can see now as he's cantering, it's not moving very forward, and he's not pushing out in the circle, so I kind of have to chase him a little bit. But I like that trot there. It's going to be interesting to hear this recording afterward and see if you can hear my dog playing with her toys in the living room. He looks a lot to the outside, so yeah, maybe something to change in the future is to bring that inside side rein a little shorter. I am trying to step a little bit behind him, not only to encourage him to go forward, but also so I can use my woohoo. Sometimes he doesn't know where to put his hind legs when he goes into the canter. He's like fine motor skills are a little off, gross motor skills. I'm stepping a little bit behind him so I can encourage him to go forward, but also from that position, I find it a little easier to bring the hand holding the lunge line back a little bit to encourage some inside flexion. Probably not Pony Club approved that way, but that's kind of what I do. So that's, you can see I keep raising my left hand and bringing it back a little bit to encourage his head to come in instead of looking out. And there you have it. She says, thanks guys, thank goodness for being done. I'm so tired. He's such a fuzzball. But he was a good boy. This wasn't a very exciting lunge. I was hoping for some more action. But hopefully this voiceover works out. And we'll see you next time.